I don't know if you know that hiking is a bit of a dangerous sport, if you want to call it that. People die all the time. It's kind of strange. Experienced hikers. So my wife, when she makes fun of me because I have in my email box, this is from this morning, I have in my email box a Google alert, all the people who died hiking, right? She's like, that's so morbid. Why do you pay attention to people who die hiking? He's like, do you want to die? You have a death wish? Like, no. It's the exact opposite. I read these stories and I learn what not to do. Okay, people freeze to death, bring extra clothes, right? They die of dehydration. Usually it's also because people are dying in the same places and the same times that I'm going to. So it's very real to me. I need this information to stay alive at times, to keep myself aware. So I did a winter hike back in December 23, and this was a year after I tried this hike, and they were young people, 19 years old, 23 years old, that froze to death. Because when you get to the top of this ridge, it's gorgeous, but it's really windy. And you're huffing and puffing, so I was so hot as I was coming up. It's like, minus 10 degrees, but you're so hot, your head is drenched with sweat. I wasn't even wearing a hat. But when you get to the top, the wind just comes. That's not snow or ice, that's sweat that was frozen on my head as I'm walking, right? So it tells you how cold it is. There are things that are really important to you. You have to carry certain things just to make sure that you can make it off the mountain. Well, that hike actually started before sunrise, when it was pitch black, because I need extra time to get up there. It's a 10-hour, 11-hour hike, and in the wintertime, you don't have a lot of sun. And so I have to start when it's pitch black. Guess what I need? What is critical? I could not make this hike. Or if I was late, I hurt myself and I was going to take longer to get down. If I don't have this one piece of equipment, my life is in danger. You know what that is, right? Yeah, that's my headlamp, right? In fact, on multi-day hikes, I got a good headlamp, but on multi-day hikes, sometimes I have a backup, okay? Because if I don't have that headlamp, my life is threatened when I need to move in a scary terrain, and this is icy, terrain. I have to know what I'm stepping on, and so on and so forth. A good headlamp in pitch dark transforms everything. You can see, and more than enough to make good choices in terms of navigating and so on and so forth. This is my headlamp. It was a gift given to me. I really value it. Like I said, I carry not only a headlamp. I'm not even hiking, but I carry a flashlight with me all the time. Okay, if you guys know me, I have certain things with me. It's called everyday carry. This is one of them. I will not leave the house, even when I have short pants, without this. Partly because I'm getting old and like I can't see it, right? At nighttime, this is a self-defense. Somebody tries to hurt you, right? And their pupils are all open because it's dark, and you shine them in the light in this way, and you look at this, I can't see, right? And then you can run. So light is really significant. It's really important. I don't mind walking in the dark because whenever I get really in trouble, I have my light with me. There are a lot of things in our lives that we don't realize how vital they are. That if we don't have them, oftentimes, we don't realize how scary, how lethal it is. If we ever had a nuclear war, you know what would kill us? It wouldn't be necessarily the radiation. It would be the nuclear winter, because it would kill vegetation, and we would not be able to have anything to eat. Can you imagine a world without light? I lived in Seattle for quite a while, and I didn't realize I was depressed half the time, because there's not enough sunlight that's hitting your retina, and you have this thing called winter blues, or a clinical depression that's caused by lack of light, called seasonal affective disorder. Light is vital, but we have it all around us, so we don't recognize that. But only when you're in dangerous situations do you realize, wow, this is so critical. We're looking at two vital things that are all around us, and we take for granted, but only when we don't have them, or when we're under threat, do we realize how valuable they are. And Jesus will use this language of salt and light as these two vital things that ultimately not only describing God's vital presence and goodness in our lives, but that we actually get to inhabit as an identity. Because he calls us, the church, the followers of Jesus, the disciples of Jesus, he says we are this vital aspect of salt of the earth, the light of the world. And it's ultimately something that's not more than just an identity. It's something that we do, okay, that we live out, that people feel, that we get to be salty, okay? You ever eat something before and go, oh, it's so salty, right? We get to be shining bright light in the midst of darkness. That's what we get to do. We're in a series called Follow Jesus, Share Hope. It's a very basic series. It's kind of so simple, too simple. In fact, it's less about figuring out all these details, and it's more about, are we living it? Are we following through? Our issues, if you've been in church for a long time, it's not a lack of knowledge. It's a lack of obedience. And I realize that as a pastor, because unfortunately, I have a lot of stuff in my noggin. And God is constantly saying, I want you to walk. I want you to follow. With this promise that as we walk with God, we experience a kind of hope the world cannot give. And we get to house a kind of hope and offer it to the world. That's beautiful, that it's of God. And so that's what this series is about. We talked about how significant this is. A central identity as Christians are followers of God. There is no way to be in relationship with Jesus and not follow him. The fact that we do not follow him basically identifies us as not in Christ. It's not that we earn it, but it's actually an identifying marker. And that what does it mean to follow him? We do what the master does. We look at him, we pay attention to what he does, so that not only do we echo that, we imitate it, but for the very reasons. Our very head, our very heart, our very hands are being transformed to be like Jesus. That's the process of one who is following Jesus. It's an incredible gift, okay? If you saw the best musician in the world, you just like, okay, I'm not saying Taylor Swift is the best musician in the world, okay? But let's say Taylor Swift said, I want you to come and follow me on tour, and I'm gonna teach you everything I know. What would you say? Sorry, I can just watch you on TV. I can go to ARS, a movie. I got it on DVD. I got it on stream now. You'd be like, oh yes, I would love to. Okay, if you are into tennis and the best tennis player in the world, for me it was Roger Federer, said, "Let me teach you everything I know." Wouldn't that be an incredible opportunity? Wouldn't you give everything you have? Well, who is the one that's inviting us to this? It's the creator of the universe, the Holy One, the most incredible person you will ever meet, who loves us with an undying love to give himself for us. That's the one saying, you get to be like me. Because all the stuff that we've been seeing is what Jesus is and what Jesus does. He says in this chapter, Matthew chapter 5, verse 13, just the first part of that verse, you and I, our very identity, you are the salt of the earth. Maybe you didn't realize it. Why is he using that salt language? Okay, you are the salt of the earth. And we're going to unpack it a bit. For us, most of the time, salt is used for what? Flavoring, right? Yeah. You can make the most delicious meal, but if it's a little short on salt, you're like, it's missing something. Or you can make the most delicious meal and it's a little heavy on salt, you're like, oh, give me some water, right? I used to go to this all-you-can-eat restaurant called Zupa, right? And they have all these soups. I get in there, and I remember like, oh, this is salty. I get to the salad, oh, this is salty. Oh, and the whole thing was so salty, I couldn't stand it. The food was good otherwise, right? For us, it's all about flavoring, and maybe that's one of the reasons why he's using this language. But back then, it's about preservation. They didn't have refrigerators or freezers. How do you not let your fish or your meat rot, right? You don't just sprinkle a little salt on there. You grind it in. You let it sit there so that the salt takes out the moisture so that it gets in there. And after a while, it does get, if you ever had salted fish before, it's like, ooh, that's pretty salty. But it doesn't rot, right? Fermentation is another version of that, but that's one of the things that we're using about salt back then. We don't know exactly what Jesus was referring to. Was he talking about flavoring? Was he talking about salt as a preservation thing? And in fact, there are other references of salt in the Bible. Salt is a sign of covenant faithfulness. Yeah? You put it on your offerings to say, I've been faithful. Salt is used to purify, to refine. Salt is used actually to make a fire go burning brighter. There are a lot of different uses that we see in the Bible. Which one was Jesus referring to? Maybe he was referring to all of them. He was referring to the usefulness, the impact, the vital importance of salt. Salt was actually used as money. Do you know that? You know the basis of the word salary? You know where that comes from? It's from the same word, salt. Yeah, because they used to pay people in salt. It was valuable. It was vital. If you see people who are dying because they've got some kind of like you drink bad water and you just have diarrhea like crazy, like cholera and other kinds of things. You know what you die of? Dehydration. But actually you die because you've lost all of your electrolytes. You die. It's lethal when you don't have enough salt in your system. Yeah. And so that's the recognition here. Maybe it's not one, preservation. Maybe it's not just flavoring. Maybe it's all of that. There's something distinctive about salt, right? Especially, it's like there's a contrast, isn't there? Like salt, no salt. You can tell right away. Sometimes you've done this. You got something in there in your cupboard and you don't know if it's salt or sugar. You've done this before? If you don't do it, sometimes you actually bake something and it's like, I put salt in there, not sugar. I made that mistake before. Right? But you can taste it. It's distinctive. It stands out. It's other. And you know what you expect when you get salt in a food or get salt. When you infuse that into fish, you know what to expect. It has effect. I think that's what he's getting after. That there is this life-giving, this helpful, useful, vital effect of salt if it's out of the salt shaker, if it is in the right amount, in the right place. Okay? If you actually just sprinkle a little salt or just put a little salt to the side of the fish, is the fish going to rot or not? Of course it will. It has to get in there, right? And I think that's the language here. Because Jesus is going to use two illustrations, salt and light, as a way of saying, both need to penetrate into the world. And as they do, we find that we have effect as disciples, followers of Jesus, Christians, the church, the body of Christ. That's what our very identity is to be. The only way to do this is to be of contrast, to be not like the world, to think differently, to choose and hold values, and to act other than the way the world acts. In such a way that it marks people go, oh, how salty, right? Oh, I know this. This is different. That's the language he is using. Some, in a way that is not just negative, salt, but actually positive. Oh, anybody have really good salt before? Like Himalayan salt? It's kind of funny. I've been using Himalayan salt only the last few years because it's so good, right? It's like really tasty compared to normal table salt. That's like cheap stuff, right? Long story short, this is a side comment. Anybody of you who are too gourmet, there's a whole issue now that because iodine was in the old salt and is not in a lot of other places, people are suffering from thyroid issues because they're eating too much Himalayan salt, not the regular salt. So long story short. Even then, because iodine is in the salt, it's vital. But I don't know where I said that. But long story short, salt is something that is pleasurable, meaningful. I love this translation from the book of Matthew, chapter 5. From the translation called The Message by Eugene Peterson from this same passage. And this is the way he translates this. Let me tell you, this is Jesus speaking, why you and I are here. You're here to be salt seasoning that brings out the God flavors of this earth. That don't sound like the Bible, but there's a poet, pastor, who's actually interpreting this and saying, he's choosing one aspect of the salt, the positive part. The salt brings out the flavors, yeah? It does, doesn't it? Why do you have sea salt caramel? Yeah. Caramel's sweet, right? Because actually, I went to an incredible sea salt caramel place, and I was about to eat it, and she said, no. Put it upside down with the salt crystals and let it hit your tongue first. Like, why? Because it'll bring out the flavor. Yeah. Isn't that interesting? something that kind of strikes your tongue and sets the whole kind of flavor profile. That's what you and I get to be, something different, distinctive. Somebody should encounter you in the way that you live, in the way that you talk, and who you are, and what your values are, and they'd be like, oh, something's off. Yeah? I love this phrase. There should be a cognitive dissonance between our liturgy, what we talk about in the church, and how we worship, and what you see in the world. People would be like, this is weird, this is different, but I like it, right? It's good, right? That's the way it should be. This is the language of living a holy life. Holy, that word at base, and we've talked about this in this place before. Holy is not, religious and sacred. It is, but the very base of that word is special. The opposite of holy is common. When he says you to be holy, different from the rest of the world, to Israel, all of these tribes and all these peoples, they have different values. They do different things. They sacrifice their first child in order to get ahead. I am different. God sacrifices his first child to get us ahead. I am other. You are to be like me. You are to live and think like me. You are to operate in community differently. That's what holiness is. Distinctive. Other. Yes, we are to abstain from every kind of evil. That's living holy. You're not, drinking, smoking, gambling, violently and so on and so forth, living a life of immorality. You're not doing that, obviously. But I think holiness is far more than the absence of evil. Holiness is the presence of incredible goodness. Yeah. If you see a holy man and he never practices kindness, he's not a holy man. Okay? This is how you know. If that person is incredibly non-generous in his speech and in his ways, that person is not holy. If that person cannot forgive but can only judge because he is so holy, that person is not holy. If that person is not loving, that person is not holy. Because God, who is holy, says what? He is love. Okay. What does it mean to be salt? It is to look like him in his holiness, to be so different. You can't put him in a box. Democrat, Republican. You can't put him in a box. He is something other, something beautiful. And then when we live like him, people go, oh, salty, vital, good. You are the salt and the light of the world. You and I are the light of the world. Jesus using two examples in a similar kind of way. Light describes this kind of contrast. You cannot have light and dark at the same time. In fact, light always wins, right? Light always wins, even a small light. And in the midst of darkness, you see light. You value light, kind of like when I'm hiking, right? That's what the language is about. He says that you and I, in this dark world, where people can't see, where it's scary. The dark is scary. You've been out in the forest in the dark? Okay? It's scary, right? That's what he's saying. You and I get to be the headlamp. We get to be the light. Once we were in darkness, this is Ephesians chapter 5, verse 8. For at one time you were darkness. You did not know how to not only figure out where you're going and how to live, but you did like everybody else in a kind of darkness. You were there. But now in Christ, you are light. Isn't that beautiful? Yeah. You and I, we're light. We get to walk as children of light because God is light. Philippians 2 describes us that you may be blameless and innocent, children of God without blemish in the midst of a crooked and twisted generation, among whom you shine as lights in the world. The darker it is, the more poignant and clear and valuable light becomes. Yeah? It becomes that way. Sailors, when they can't navigate, what do? They look at the stars. And it's that small light of the stars that guides them. Yeah. And I used this example already. Yeah. Small little headlamp, man, that's a lifesaver. And you can see more than you need. That's the language of salt and light. This is our identity. This is who we are. You are the salt of the earth. You are the light of the world. as we live it, guess what? It all becomes our destiny. We function as this to the cultures, to the worlds around us, ultimately. So if salt is the bringing out the God flavors of the earth, Eugene Peterson says, you are the light of the world, bringing out the God colors in the world. Okay? And he's using the same thing, basically saying, you're revealing something beautiful. You're revealing something true, something good. You're not coming to judge and destroy, but it's actually in your otherness, your views of God, to reveal what God looks like. F.W. Bruner writes, the purpose of our lives, remember this identity, this is destiny, is to remove the veil from the Father's face. People can't see him. What does God look like? But we get to remove that veil because we are salt, we're the light, we shine, we showcase God somehow. And to display something of God's glory to the world. What does God look like? Look at Jesus. This is John 1. What does God look like? Look at the ones who look like Jesus. That's us. Okay? I want to make a note here. We don't somehow make ourselves good and act like, think like, and be like Jesus and fake it so that we can become part of the family and be loved by God. That's not the point here. Okay? We do not make ourselves close relatives of Jesus by doing the will of the Father. Okay? Instead, doing the Father's will, revealing him and what he looks like, identifies us as his mothers, sisters, and brothers. Isn't that interesting? When we are and act like the salt of the earth and light of the world, revealing him, tasting, okay, revealing the God flavors and the God colors, okay, what does it mean? People get to see who God is, but they also get to see, oh, these are God's people. So this point here is being hit twice, salt and light. But if you pay attention to these short verses, the effect here, the important part here is not that you are, that's great, but watch out. What happens when the salt of the earth doesn't have an effect, doesn't do its job? What happens when the light of the earth, of the world, is hidden? It shouldn't be. It must not be. That's the part here. In other words, these are vital. They must have effect. We must be the salt, be salty and shine light. Because we are vital, whether the world knows it or not. If that effect is negated, it's ugly. It's empty. This is what Jesus says. You are the salt of the earth, but if salt has lost its taste, what is it? I can't tell. Yeah. And the saltiness, if you can't taste it, it means it doesn't have the chemical properties. And you can use it, but it won't preserve. And you can't put it in food because it doesn't work. If saltiness has lost its taste, how shall its saltiness be restored? Right? It's kind of like once you've lost it, you've lost it. Basically saying, it's useless. It's useless. It's no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled under people's feet. It's describing a disciple of Christ who does not follow Jesus, who looks like the rest of the world, like Lot, who's living near and then in Sodom and doing the very same things and looks the same. He's become completely adapted to the world. No longer good for anything. You are a light of the world. A city set on a hill cannot be hidden. Okay? The point of here is, if you're light, you can't hide it. You mustn't hide it. The very point of you being light is for people to see. The Message version translates that verse like this. God is not a secret to be kept. We're going public with this. As public as a city on a hill. Okay, so hikers know this. Sometimes you're caught in the brush, you can't see, but every now and then you can see abroad, and it's the stuff on top the landmarks that are on top. Cities were built on hills, partly so that they're visible, and for protection too. You can see them. You can see them during the day. You know where you're going. But more importantly, you can see them at night. Because they would light these little oil lamps, but the rooms actually, the stone oftentimes that they would use back then was kind of semi-opaque. and you could see it. It's like glowing from afar. You're traveling and it's scary and you don't know how to get there, but you can see that like a beacon up on a hill. The whole point is don't hide it. You mustn't hide it. It's supposed to be seen. Our lives, us revealing God in just who we are and how we live, is supposed to be visible. Same way let your light shine before others so that they see your good works and give glory to the Father who is in heaven. Some of us don't like to, do good works. Hey, look at me. I make fun of people who do this, virtue signaling, right? I gave this much money, right? I did all these things because they're doing it to make themselves look good. Virtue signaling is really not helpful to anybody. Okay, people will sense and smell your self-righteousness, but it doesn't help you. It draws you further away from God, right? It makes you a Pharisee all these ways. And so Jesus does say stuff like, when you're fasting, don't go out into the middle of the street. Oh, I'm so hungry. Oh my gosh, I've been fasting for 40 days. Oh, don't go do that, right? Don't like when you're in the temple, and you're giving and you're like Salvation Army, clink, 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 so everybody can hear. Okay, don't look at me. I want a name, on this building because I gave $1 million. Okay, when you're praying, don't yell loud. Go in your closet. So, yes. That's true. These acts of righteousness, we're going to cover in Lent, by the way, they're for us and God. But something about us should be so apparent, people cannot help but say, are you Christian? Yeah. I had one of my, my youth student's husband was on The Apprentice. Okay. Yeah. And we're like, oh, he's on The Apprentice, and he's doing this whole thing. And later on I talked to him. I was like, so James, what was it like to be in that cutthroat environment, And he said, yeah, it was difficult. I just really tried to keep my integrity, but also be really excellent. And about halfway through, everybody says, asking me a question. Are you Christian? Yeah. And he's like, that was the best compliment I'd ever gotten. He never said anything except the way he did things in his work and why he spoke and how he treated people. Yeah. I think it should be like you eat garlic the night before, right? People, did you eat garlic? Like, I can't help it. That's the way it should be. The fragrance of Christ should be coming out, right? You can't hide it. You can probably put some perfume on. Doesn't help. It just makes it nastier, right? Right? That's what it should be. We're bringing out the God flavors, the God colors, just because that's our identity. We get to be good, live a holy life, be holy in all the good ways, and get to do good in a way that's visible. That's who we are, how we're called to live. People do not light a lamp and then put it under a basket, but on a stand, which gives light to all in the house. That's why you are here. Not to keep God a secret, but actually to reveal him. Isn't that beautiful? But the church doesn't always do that. Christians don't always do that. Oftentimes we hide. We don't want to out ourselves, or oftentimes we just get so caught up in the ways of the world that people cannot tell a difference. They don't smell garlic, right? I found this very interesting. There's a new thing called social entrepreneurship. All these people see what's wrong in the world, and they're starting nonprofits, and they're doing all kinds of incredible work to help the elderly, the youth, the hungry, those who are in mental health issues, and they're doing all these beautiful things. And you ask yourself, where did this come from? One person made the comment that, the reason why all the social entrepreneurism is coming up is because the church has stopped doing it. In the history of America and the history of the world, the church was the ones that were making hospitals, schools, right? Look at all these hospitals and schools are named after some church stuff. Harvard was a seminary, all right? My school, University of Chicago, was a seminary. It was built by a priest. It was all Christian based. But then over time, actually, the church stops doing good, caring for the world, being the salt and light of the world, right? We kind of pull away, and all of a sudden you realize, why does the people hate Christians and judge the church? Because they don't smell garlic. They don't see the God-colored flavors of the world. Yeah. So this message is prompting us. We individually get to be the salt and light of the earth. But more profoundly, we together get to be the salt and light of the earth. That you are in the original language is plural. You together, you guys together are the salt and light of the earth. We get to do that individually because sometimes we're out in the world, right? Penetrating into the world like meat, salt, right? Like a flashlight but oftentimes we don't realize we're like a city, a group together, a community that gets to be the salt and light of the earth. I find it really interesting because when you see the way the church in history has tried to be salt and light in a dark, dark time, like the Middle Ages, the Dark Ages. You guys remember this from history? Where there was all this violence and vandalism, and all civilization broke down. Everybody's kind of like, it's like 1,000 years of darkness. It wasn't that bad, but that's how they describe it, the Dark Ages. What did the church do? They survived. They kept information by going into these monasteries. Have you ever been to the monastery before? It's gorgeous. On my sabbatical, I went to this one monastery up in Canada, way out there. I had to drive a bit. But it's like fantastic. It's so peaceful. This is what inside looks like. And you get to worship, and the monks are doing this Gregorian chant, these Benedictine monks, and you feel so spiritual, right? They live, 28 of these guys live here, and they just work and pray, okay? And it's almost like, oh, I'm so stressed out. You go over there, and it's like, I want to live here, right? They're happy, they eat, they work, they have purpose, and so on and so forth. I would go, and it's gorgeous. This is over the Fraser River. This was my quiet time place, right? It's a gorgeous place. But that's what European churches did during the Dark Ages. The Roman Catholic Church, they built these monasteries where everybody on the ground, everybody who's living in the cities look over the monasteries and go, yeah, the holy people, they live over there. But they don't influence us at all. The Celtic Church in Northern England, they chose intentionally a very different approach. They built their monasteries right smack in the middle where all of the people traveled, like Times Square. Okay. That's where their community was. And they kept their doors open. It was like you could get a free meal and a free night's rest at Times Square anytime you wanted. Can you imagine? Right? You're traveling and you're exhausted and somebody, come in, let me feed you, let me take care of you. Here's a shower, here's a bed, here's clean sheets. They never said you have to pray with us, you have to come to service. You're more than welcome to be a part of anything, but we're just going to be ourselves. And he would hear prayers. You would hear laughter. You would see work. You would see people, helping each other. It was so visible. And they intentionally planted right smack in the middle where people can see, because they understood the church is to be the salt and light of the world. One more example of what a church should be in a way that it is illustrative. It reveals God. It reveals what's going to come. It's in the language of citizenship. Okay? How many are U.S. citizens? You don't have to raise your hand, right? It means you belong to a people. You have not only rights. Okay? If you're out there and you get kidnapped, guess what? America's going to fight for you. It's the most beautiful thing. Soldiers will die for you. Okay? It describes privilege in some ways. But Paul, who has the privilege of Roman citizenship, which back then was like an American citizenship, it was heavy. You don't mess with it. You see in the book of Acts, people are screwed with him, they beat him, and it's like, I'm a Roman citizen. And they're like, ooh, my bad, because it comes with status. Not many people have it. You're not a Roman citizen. You're not an American citizen. You're a citizen of heaven. Holy cow. Okay? That's what your passport reads. Okay? Kingdom of God. Right? Isn't that amazing? Well, citizens not only had incredible privileges, citizens had responsibilities. You become a citizen because you love Rome, because you believe in Rome. You know how Rome works, and Rome was incredible. They built roads that last till today. They're still using Roman roads. The logistics, they were using concrete that was lost, and we still haven't figured it out, but it's self-fixing concrete. Buildings that built that back then still alive because of the concrete they were using that we lost technology of for thousands of years. Rome was an incredible engineering and logistical civilization. They had all kinds of issues. But Romans kind of felt like we know how to build community. We know how to live. And as they would conquer with their mighty army, they knew that there's going to be people who don't want to be Roman. And so their strategy was, we're going to take a bunch of citizens, and we're going to plant a colony in this foreign place. They have their values, they do their things their way, but we're going to show them by planting citizens right smack in the middle of like Ephesus. And then that city gets to see what Rome really looks like. Rome's values, Rome's genius, Rome's literature, Rome's community interactions and politics. We're going to make it visible. We're going to win the hearts and minds of the people that we beat them militarily by planting a colony there. Isn't that interesting? We don't like the word colony. It's like, oh, you think you're superior than us. But actually, that's the intent of a colony, is to make your culture visible and then to invite people. You get to be Roman too. The church is a colony of heaven. You are a citizen of heaven with its privileges and its responsibilities. And what did the church do in Rome as citizens of heaven? How were they salt and light? They did crazy stuff. This is from the Antoine Plague. We don't know if it was smallpox or measles, but it was wiping people out. People were dying left and right. Romans, even physicians fled. Because you stay, you die. It was kind of like COVID times 100, okay? You stay, you die. People would throw out their dead bodies, family, out in the street. And they wouldn't clean them up because they just wanted to survive. The only people who took care of others, in fact, there were Christians not in Rome, rushed into the city. While all these people are leaving, all these people are coming in. They're asking, don't go there, don't go there. You know, like, why are you going in there? And the Christians are going, we're going to take care of the people who are dying. Are you crazy? Are you stupid? Right? Don't you understand how plagues work? You got to run away. But people who were there, the Christians, even though some of them died of the plague, they took care of each other and they took care of their pagan neighbors. And it gets into history. It's like, what are these crazy Christians doing? They didn't only do this then. They did it 100 years later in the Cyprian plague. And people were like amazed. Like, how can these people be so good? And it gave them the cognitive dissonance. We're Rome, but we don't love people like this. Who is their God? Okay? Rome didn't become Christian overnight, by the way. But how did it? This superior civilization. It was through the salt and light, the goodness, the love, the holiness of the people that lived there. So there's lots of these stories. Back then they had a thing called paterfamilias. That means the father had complete power over the whole house. And in politics, you don't want too many daughters. But so if you had too many daughters and his wife just gave birth to a daughter, this is horrendous. He says, I don't want another daughter, I need a son. And so they would take that infant and put him out in the street. I don't know why this thing with the street, but they would put him out in the street to die. Can you imagine how horrendous that is? But that was the culture. That was the Roman culture. Infanticide, because the paterfamilias didn't want the child. Doesn't matter how much the wife would be crying and so on and so forth, that baby oftentimes would just sit on the street. There's only two people who would pick up a baby girl like that. Pimps who would raise up the child to be a prostitute, to make money back, to invest in it, and Christians who would raise the child and just love them, bring them into health and worth. Yeah. And people would be like, why are you doing this? You're getting no reward from this. I understand why the pimps do it, but why are you? That cognitive dissonance tore down what people thought was good. We get to do that because we are salt and light of the earth. This verse in Ephesians is talking about don't participate in darkness because you were once there, you're out now. Instead, expose them. It doesn't mean going in and saying, oh, you sinner, oh, you horrible. You expose them how? With light. With your goodness, with our love, with our care. And exposes, oh, we thought we were good, but we're not. Yeah. There are a lot of people who are living in darkness And they're looking for light, but they can't see it because we're not shining, we're hiding. One headlamp can lead down a dangerous path. It doesn't have to be that much light. A small amount of light can be so powerful as a sign of what's really true. This is my last illustration. So I had a friend who, he was a pastor, and so he left his apartment. But as he was leaving his apartment, the power went out. It was a whole block went out, blackout. And so he didn't know what was on and off, but he had to run to lead a Bible study, so he left. And when he came back in, he was wondering to himself, I wonder if the power's back on my building. He couldn't tell, because when he left, all of the, it was during the day, so all of the lights were turned off. So he cracked open the door, and he looked into this dark room, and he said, I know there's power in this room. Okay? And he's like, I know I can turn on any switch, and it would light up right away, because there's power in this room. What was that? What was that sign? What told him that room had all the potential and had all the electricity he ever needed? What was the sign? It was that little LED on the power strip. This little red light, bing, off in the corner. He saw that and he goes, okay, I can turn off any switch and boom, 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 boom. You and I are that little LED. We don't brighten the whole room. Actually, I have one more illustration. I'll do it in a second. It's important. We're not supposed to be incredibly holy like Billy Graham. But as we do good and be good, it tells the world, if you hook into the outlet of God's love through Jesus, electricity, energy is there for you. We become the symbol of hope that people see. If that power strip little LED is on, that means this universe is lit up with the juice of God's love and power. Okay? But if that was covered, he wouldn't know. Right? All right, so last illustration, because this is the part where it's important to know, because sometimes it feels like it's too stressful. I gotta be light. I gotta be good. I gotta be salt. I don't know how to do that. That's hard, right? It's hard. Well, Jesus says not only that we are the light, but kind of confusing. He says, I am the light of the world. Well, which one is it, Jesus? Are you the light of the world, or are we the light of the world? Choose, please. This is where it gets a little interesting. Ultimately, he is the light of the world. But we are the light of the world because, why? We're connected with him. Yeah. His light flows through us. One time you were darkness, but now you are light in the Lord. His light somehow shines and glows from us, right? My friend, a seminary roommate, he was an artist, he's a painter. He painted this. Oh, I brought it. Where'd it go? Oh, I left it upstairs. Anyway, if you want to see it, I'll bring it to the refreshments. He painted this from memory. Okay, he's pretty good. It's very hard to paint something from memory, right? So one thing to kind of, but he painted because it was so memorable. He was hiking by himself, backpacking out in Glacier National Park. And at nighttime, he couldn't sleep because he said it was the brightest night he'd ever been encountered. It was a full moon. And that moonlight, it showed everything. He could see everything clearly, like it was almost day. He's like, you're a city boy. He's like, I've never seen the moon this bright. It changed everything. He could see all colors. Can you see moonlight showing colors? Because it was that bright. It's so burned in his memory that he actually, he painted this. He gave this to me as a wedding gift, telling me I'm the light of the world. Yeah, I value it. Yeah, I'll hold on to it. I have it in my room, actually. I haven't put a frame on it yet because I'm cheap, but I still hold on to it, right? The moon doesn't make its own light, does it? All you students? Where did all that light come from? Enough to show the whole lake and all of the reeds and the mountain and the trees. Where did all that light come from? From the sun. But it's nighttime. And the sun's not shining, is it? Or is it? It's shining through the moon. We are the light of the world because we reflect the light of Christ. You want to be a bright light? It's not from your self-righteousness. It's from your proximity. And it's from the angle from which the light of Christ bounces off your face, right? It's the compassion of Christ that you experience. And it comes to you even through the people of God that you can give away. It comes from the holiness and the discipline and the goodness that you don't count yourself to be the most important person in the world, that you can give away something valuable to somebody in need because you know God's love. You can be generous. You can be kind. You can be strong. You can hold on to convictions, all because you are in proximity of the light. Jesus says, follow me. Whoever follows me will not walk in darkness, will always have the light of life, enough for yourself and for the people who are walking in darkness. Let's pray.